All right, everybody, this is the Fantasy Sports Boss. Welcome to 2023 NCAA Tournament Bracketology. So this is, I guess you could say, the encore version. I did Bracketology yesterday. Was asked to do another program by a couple of people who missed it. So I know that the replay, there was some issues with the replay queuing up yesterday's show, but today I'm back and I'm going to do another show for you where I'm going to once again go through the entire bracket and the final four teams and share with all of you the teams that I feel are the best using all of the systems that I have here, which we're going to go through one by one, which the teams make up the best Final Four and also the national championship winners and also the key upset picks as well. So these are all scenarios and systems I'm going to go through that have helped me pick the national champion 3 of the last 4 years. I picked Villanova in 2018, 2019 picked Virginia, missed on when Baylor won it. In 2021, and then I came back and was able to successfully pick Kansas last season. So 3 of the last 4 years, picked the winner using these systems, and also finished in the 2 of the last 3 years, the top percentile in the ESPN bracket challenge. So hope you guys have your pen and papers handy because I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you over the next hour and a half, however long it takes. And really, there's some really revealing systems that I'm going to be showing you guys, including top two teams that top 2 seeded teams that are automatic throwouts based on history, a certain trend that's 0-34 in terms of making the Final Four, and 2 of the top 4, the top 8 teams overall qualify for that are automatic throwouts. But I want to start with the picking upsets scenario. So I have a couple of systems here in terms of picking upsets that I think would be certainly very useful. And again, if you miss any of this information, you can go back and watch the replay later. But the first one is that now Ken Pomeroy, I know anybody who knows college basketball knows Ken Pomeroy. He's got the very addictive statistician page that he puts out every year that's very accurate in terms of identifying who the top teams are. And it also jives into some of the systems that I have as well. So now, there for 11 seeds, all right, teams that were seeded 11 or worse, so 11 to 16, that were ranked outside of Ken Pomeroy's top 100 going into the tournament, okay? 57 such teams, all right, that were ranked, that were 11 seed or worse outside of Ken Pomeroy's top 100 going into the tournament. Only 6 of those 57 teams won their first round matchup. All right. So 6 out of 57 teams, it's a very small number. So any of the teams, if you check out Ken Pomeroy's cumulative rankings going into the tournament, which is available now, basically you want to circle the teams that are outside of his top 100 that have an 11 seed or worse. Now those teams are UC Santa Barbara, 14 seed, Grand Canyon, Montana State, Princeton, Vermont, Colgate. I know some people have been picking Colgate. Kennesaw State, who's a 14 seed. UNC Asheville, Northern Kentucky, Texas A&M CC, who won yesterday. Howard, Southeast Missouri, who lost. Texas Southern, and Fairleigh Dickinson. So, really just 14, 15, and 16 seeds. But we have seen, 14 and 15 seeds win the last couple of years. Really throughout the history of the tournament, they've won. So any of these teams that I just listed, you can automatically throw them out. Now, last year, of course, St. Peter's did come through, but that was like the outlier of all outliers, so we're not going to pay attention to that. So again, 11 seed or worse, if they're outside the top 100 in the Ken Pomeroy cumulative rankings, they're not going to win their first round matchup. All right. And here's another good one. So mid-majors, not from the major conferences, mid-majors that have a top 5 seed since 2012, are 6-8 in round 1. That's not a good record, obviously. So mid-major teams that have a top 5 seed, 6-8 in round 1 since 2012. All right. This season, St. Mary's, who's a 5, and San Diego State, who's a 5. All right. Now, San Diego State they have a dangerous opponent in Charleston. That's a 5-12 game. Just obviously like St. Mary's is as well. But San Diego State, the Mountain West has done horrible, absolutely horrible in the tournament over the years. So I would be very concerned about San Diego State. And VCU, who's as hot as a pistol coming out of the A-10 tournament, they're taking on St. Mary's, and I actually like VCU to win that game. So, I feel more strongly about VCU upsetting St. Mary's than I am, of Charleston knocking off San Diego State. But again, 6 and 8, top 5 seed, non-major conferences, St. Mary's and San Diego State are in bad positions in the first round of the tournament. All right, here's an easy one. Teams making their tournament debut, first time a team has made the tournament, they are 6 and 92 in the first round. So Kennesaw State, who's a 14th seed, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head who they're playing. They're playing Xavier, and I've seen at least some minor chatter about them winning that game. Based on this trend, 6 and 92 teams that make their tournament debut in first round, you could throw out Kennesaw State. All right. Okay, so here's another one for the first, at least, for the first couple of rounds. And there's some big name teams here. Only 7 of 50 at-large bids, teams that got an at-large bid that had a losing conference record, did wind up making the Sweet 16. Let me go over that again. So there's been 50 teams since 2002 that have gotten an at-large bid with a losing conference record. Only 7 of them made the Sweet 16. All right. So 43 of the 50 one and done, or even less than that. All right. Now, so this season, there's 3 such teams. One of them is already out, Mississippi State. They were 8 and 10 in the SEC. They lost last night to Pittsburgh. So they're already out. So now 7 out of 51. I didn't even update that. So 7 out of 51 now, teams that got an at-large bid, had a losing conference record, did not make the Sweet 16. So Mississippi State is out. Arkansas is an 8 seed. They were 8 and 10 in the SEC. Arkansas, who I do like in their first round matchup. Who are they playing again? I have the bracket. They're playing Illinois. I do like them to beat Illinois in round 1, but I'm not picking them to upset Kansas based on this trend. 7 of 51 teams now, including Mississippi State, have failed to have reached the Sweet 16 with a losing conference record, getting an at-large bid. And then finally, West Virginia. So I do like West Virginia in round 1 to beat Maryland. This is a team coming from the Big 12. I know their 19-14 record is not very good, but on paper at least. But this is a good West Virginia team that could really score and shoot the 3 well. I think they're going to wind up beating Maryland, but I'm not putting them anywhere past that. I wouldn't have picked them to beat Alabama anyway. But 7 of 51 teams advanced to the Sweet 16 that had a losing conference record coming into the tournament. All right. So West Virginia, Arkansas, you're not going to put them through to the Sweet 16 based on these trends here. All right. Now here's another one. Well, let's, I kind of want to use this one for the Final Four. So I'll wait on this. All right. You know what? I'll talk about this one now. So extreme teams. All right. I know you probably, anybody that's paid attention to the NCAA tournament knows all about extreme teams. So an extreme team, using Ken Pomeroy's numbers again, is when you were in the top 10, either in adjusted offense or adjusted defense, and outside the top 50 in the other. So, top 10 in adjusted offense, outside of the 50 in adjusted defense, or top 10 in adjusted defense outside the top 50 in adjusted offense. So 155 teams have come into the tournament under this scenario. So 155 teams have entered the NCAA tournament as an extreme team, top 10 in adjusted offense, outside the top 50 in adjusted defense. Only 4 of those 155 teams made the Final Four. That is a crazy number. That's 0.3%. All right. 155 extreme teams coming into the tournament. Only 4 advanced to the Final Four. And there are some big names that are extreme teams this year, led by Gonzaga. Gonzaga is a popular Final Four pick. I've seen this all over the place. A lot of people thinking, okay, the West, UCLA's banged up. Kansas, they're not going to go back-to-back, so we're going to put Gonzaga in the Final Four. Don't do it. Gonzaga, they are number 1 in adjusted offense, but they're number 76 in adjusted defense. They're not making the Final Four. Baylor, who I don't think really anybody was going to pick in the Final Four anyway, they are number 2 in adjusted offense, 104 in adjusted defense. Baylor's been playing like shit coming into the tournament. They're not going to go to the Final Four for sure. Xavier's getting some attention. They are 9th in adjusted offense, 70th in adjusted defense. They're a throwout in terms of making the Final Four. Iowa State, they went to the Elite Eight last year. Their adjusted offense is 96. Their adjusted defense is 8. Iowa State is a throwout. And then you have Iowa, 3rd in adjusted offense, 167 in adjusted defense. Their defense is pathetic. I think they're going to lose to Auburn anyway. They're playing in Auburn's backyard in round 1. And then finally, Missouri, who I also think was vastly overseeded. Utah State's going to beat them in round 1. Missouri is 10th in adjusted offense, 178 in adjusted defense. All of these teams, Gonzaga, Baylor, Xavier, Iowa State, Iowa, and Missouri, not going to make the Final Four. One more time, 155 teams that are called extreme teams, top 10 in adjusted offense or defense, outside of the top 50 in the other, whether it's adjusted offense or defense. Only 4 of 155 of these teams made the Final Four. Great stat. And only 13 of those teams made the Elite Eight, which is 9.7%. So even putting them in the Elite Eight, Baylor, I would not put Baylor even in the Elite Eight, but Gonzaga, Xavier, some people might put them in the Elite Eight. I would be very careful about that as well. It's very hard to win 4 games, in the case of Gonzaga, where your defense is that bad. So don't overthink it. Don't put Gonzaga in the Final Four. Don't put Baylor in the Final Four. Don't put Xavier in the Final Four. All right. So that's a really good number there. All right. So what I want to do now is transition into the Final Four. Right, this is where brackets are really won. Obviously, it goes without saying that you have to pick the winner, the national champion, to win your bracket pool. All right, but you also got to get, try to get 3 out of the 4 Final Four teams. And last year, I got 3 out of the Final Four, which helped me win my pool and finish in the top percentile of the ESPN Bracket Challenge. I only did not get North Carolina, which a lot of other people didn't. So was able to get to the other 3 teams. And using the system that I'm going to share with you now. Now, I have a lot more systems. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I have about 16 Final Four systems that, so it's going to be a lot. I'm going to be throwing a lot at you. But again, this is very revealing stuff in terms of who's going to make the Final Four. Now, what I did was I really just took the top 3 seeds. I also added Kentucky because I know Kentucky's very talented. When not a lot is expected of Kentucky in the past, they've gone far in the tournament. So I did include him in this exercise, but mostly, and I also included Creighton because I think Creighton is a really good team that's underseeded at 6, but mostly it's just all, top 4 seeds that I included in this one. So the first one is Ken Pomeroy, again, going back to him. The 70 of the last 80. Okay, so if you're writing it down, 70 of the last 80 teams to make the Final Four went into the tournament top 20 in Ken Pomeroy's rankings. So that's a big number. 70 out of 80 finished the regular season and conference tournament season top 20 in his overall rankings going into the tournament. All right, now all the numbers I'm giving you are pre-tournament. All right, I don't give you any of the after the tournament. That's hogwash. But all of those. So I have. Like I said, I have all the top teams here. So the teams that did not qualify for the top 20 was Duke. Duke did not qualify. They were just outside, I believe, at 21. Kansas State, it did not make the top 20, and neither did Kentucky. So Houston did, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Gonzaga, Texas, Arizona, UConn, Baylor, Marquette, Creighton, Tennessee, and Xavier. Those are all the teams that did qualify. So they get a point. All right, so that's how we're going to do it. We're going to add points as we go along here. Kansas State, Duke did not get the point. Neither did Kentucky. All right. The next one, 63 of the last 80 teams qualify for this one. That's 78%. The Ken Pom adjusted offense, all right, had to be top 30 pre-tournament. 63 of the last 80 Final Four teams were top 30 in Ken Pom's adjusted offense. All right. Once again here, Duke, Kansas State do not qualify. All right. Tennessee also does not qualify. Kentucky did. So every other team that I mentioned, Houston, Alabama, Kansas. If you want to write the team's name, the team names down, I'll do it for you now. Houston, for this exercise, I have Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Gonzaga, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Baylor, Kansas State, Marquette, Creighton, Tennessee, Xavier, and Kentucky. All right. So if you're jotting all those down. Now, we already said with the Ken Pomeroy top 20 overall, only Duke and Kansas State and Kentucky did not qualify. So leave those boxes blank next to those guys. For the top 30 in Ken Pomeroy's adjusted offense, the only teams that did not meet that requirement was Duke, Kansas State, and Tennessee. All right. Next, write this down. Adjusted offense top 50. So now we're going to the top 50. Ken Pomeroy's pre-tournament adjusted offense top 50. 74 of the last 80 teams qualified for the Final Four, having an adjusted offense in the top 50. So we're going a little further now down the list. All right. In this scenario, only Kansas State didn't qualify. All right. So Kansas State does not qualify under this scenario. All right. So Kansas State's getting knocked early in this one. All right, next. The adjusted, now we're going to go back to the adjusted, now we're going to do the adjusted defense. All right, so now with defense, not as imperative as the offense in terms of needing a top defense to get to the Final Four, but the cutoff for Ken Pomeroy's adjusted defense pre-tournament is 50. 72 of the last 80 teams that finished in the top 50 of Ken Pomeroy's pre-tournament adjusted defense made the Final Four. So 72 out of 80. That's a lot. The only teams that did not qualify in the top 50 adjusted defense was Gonzaga, Baylor, Xavier, and Kentucky. All right. So top 50, Ken Pomeroy adjusted defense. 72 of the last 80 Final Four teams made the top 50. Qualifying is Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Kansas State, Marquette, Creighton, and Tennessee. All right. Now, next one. This is a big one. All right. This one you want to bold this one. All right. Teams have to be either a regular season conference champion or their conference tournament champion. 17 of the last 20 Final Four teams qualified here. All right. And this obviously shows that your team has skill. All right. So the teams that either were regular season conference champions or postseason tournament conference champions, that was Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Gonzaga, Texas, Arizona, Duke, and Marquette. UConn did not. Baylor did not. Kansas State did not. Creighton did not. Tennessee did not. Xavier did not. And Kentucky did not. Okay? So those are the teams that either were conference regular season champs or postseason champs. All right. Next one. Moving right along. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is number 6. System number 6. Winning 24 games. 83% of the teams going back to 2002 that have made the Final Four have won 24 games, at least including the conference tournaments. All right. This is another good stat. So 83%, that's a lot. The teams coming into the tournament now that have won 24 games, Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Gonzaga, Texas, Arizona, Duke, Marquette, and Xavier. The teams that did not win 24 games coming in are UConn, Baylor, Kansas State, Creighton, Tennessee, and Kentucky. All right. To this point, it's already looking, pretty obvious that Kansas State and Baylor are pretty weak Final Four contenders. All right. Now we're six done. All right. We've done six systems already. The only teams so far that have qualified for everyone are Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Texas, Arizona, and Marquette. That's it. So we're starting to deviate a little bit now, breaking it up a little bit. All right. So we talked about earlier in the show the extreme teams. All right. Extreme teams don't go to the Final Four. Only 4 of 155 extreme teams coming into the tournament, where your top 10 in adjusted offense or defense and outside the top 50 in the other, make the Final Four. All right, that's it. That's as clear as day. And we talked about Gonzaga, Baylor, and Xavier are all extreme teams. They are automatic throwouts for me. All right. You could right now at this very moment in system number 7 here, you could just stop counting Gonzaga, stop counting Baylor, stop counting Xavier. We're not using any of those 3 teams for the Final Four. All right. And again, I'm very strict. I personally think Gonzaga is a good team, but I'm always sticking to the system, and it's been very good to me. Those 3 teams are automatic throwouts for me, 100%. All right, 80% of the teams going back to 2002 were top 3 seeds. That's everybody except Creighton, Tennessee, and Kentucky. All right, so Duke and UConn as well. All right, so Duke, UConn, Creighton, Tennessee, and Kentucky are not top 3 seeds. So they do not get the check mark next to their names. So we still 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're 8 systems in now, and still the perfect numbers are Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Texas, Arizona, and Marquette. All right, so that's it. We're starting to really break through now. All right, field goal percentage. All right, so this is not a big one. 24 of the last 32 teams to make the Final Four. So really, 2/3, which is still a decent number. Finished in the top 100 in field goal percentage. Qualifying for this is Houston, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Gonzaga, Texas, Arizona, UConn, Marquette, Creighton, and Xavier. Alabama does not qualify for the field goal percentage in the top 100. Now, again, 2/3, 66%. I want to have a little bit higher number, so I'm not going to kill Alabama for that one. But it's at least something worth discussing. All right, moving right along. So Bardovic. So we talked about Ken Palm. That's one of the real big statistician for NCAA basketball. But Bardovic is another one that's gotten a lot of acclaim over the last couple of years. So in terms of Bardovic's history, what he looked at is in his overall rankings, the top 50, 54 of the last 56 teams that go into the tournament in his top 50 overall rankings qualify for the Final Four. So 54 of the last 56, which is a big number, were in the top 50 going into the tournament. To make it real easy, every single team qualifies for that we've been discussing so far. Every single team qualifies, so there's really no need to go into that one more. That's more for next year if you want to jot that one down. Keeping with Bardovic's system, the top 70 in his adjusted D, 54 of the last 56 Final Four participants finished going into the tournament with a top 70 in adjusted defense. All right, so that's a big number. 54 of the last 56 Final Four teams finished the regular season and conference tournament season being in the top 50 of his adjusted D. Qualifying for that number is Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Kansas State, Marquette, Creighton, Tennessee. Not qualifying, Gonzaga, Baylor, Xavier, and Kentucky. Baylor, Xavier, and Gonzaga's defense is just too bad for them to make the Final Four. All right, we're finishing the exercise, but Gonzaga, Baylor, and Xavier are just toss outs. More so for that extreme team label than anything else. All right, next one. Effective field goal percentage, according to Bardovic. 53 of the last 56 Final Four teams finished in the top 175 in effective field goal percentage. All right. The only team that doesn't qualify for this is Tennessee. Tennessee's offense has been really bad, especially since they lost their point guard there, last couple of weeks to a torn ACL. So Tennessee was the only one that did not qualify for top 175 in effective field goal percentage. All right, 2 more to go, and then we're going to start adding everything up. Turnover rate, top 100 in the country going into the tournament in turnover rate, meaning good. You have a good turnover rate, top 100, all right? From the least to the most at team 300, whatever it is, however many teams are in Division I. All right, so the teams that qualify for the top 100 in turnover rate are Houston, Kansas, UCLA, Gonzaga, Texas, Marquette, and Tennessee. That's it. Not Alabama, not Purdue. Alabama has some issues with turnovers, but what I will say is that Alabama plays very fast and they have a lot of possessions. So sometimes, they do have a lot of turnovers, but it also is a percentage. So we do have to knock them on this one. All right, and then the last one is interesting to me. 3-point percentage. Obviously, we know the three-pointer is a big thing in college basketball. 35% is now the benchmark now that they've extended the three-point line. It used to be 37%, but now 35% going into the tournament is the benchmark. Not many teams qualify for this, believe it or not. None of the top teams. Gonzaga does qualify, but we already decided to toss out Gonzaga. UConn qualifies. Baylor qualifies. We already talked about getting rid of Baylor. Creighton qualifies. Xavier, another throwout, qualifies. And Kentucky qualifies. That's it. So 3-point shooting is a little bit of an issue for some of these teams. All right. Now, with that said, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 systems. All right. We have 14 systems. I did skip over one. Bardovic, let's see, it was his top. Oh, no, I didn't. I did include that one. Never mind. So 14 systems for the Final Four. All right. The teams, when you add it all up, there are only 3 teams that qualified in, 4 teams that qualified in 13 of the 14 systems. All right. That was Houston. That was Kansas. That was UCLA. And that was Texas. Okay. So those are your teams right there. How about that? Houston. We all know Houston. And I think Sasser's going to be fine. And Houston is just really pretty much, other than the 3-point percentage, that's the only one they didn't qualify in. 13 out of 14, that is a very strong team. Kansas, looking to repeat, qualified in all 13. That's a very strong team. UCLA, know they have injuries for sure, but they have qualified in 13 of the 14 systems. Let's see. We talked about Texas. Texas, very strong team as well. Makes me a little nervous with the coaching situation of Rodney Terry, but they do qualify in 13 of these systems. So I mean, this is very impressive for sure. And actually, excuse me, I was mistaken. Marquette also qualifies with 13, but Marquette has an issue that I'm going to get to here that I haven't discussed. The wild card issue with Marquette, why I'm throwing them out. And also why I'm going to throw out Purdue, who qualifies in 12 of the 14 systems. So here's the reason why I'm tossing those two. And going back to 2002, all right, there have been 34 teams that began the season unranked, according to the Associated Press top 25, but then went into the tournament with a top 2 seed. Okay, so 34 teams began the season unranked, then went into the tournament with a top 2 seed. None of those 34 teams made the Final Four. That's a crazy number. 2 teams that qualify for that scenario, Purdue, who always has trouble in the tournament as it is, and Marquette, who were picked to finish 9th in the Big East in the preseason, and now through very good coaching by Shaka Smart, who himself has had problems in the tournament outside of his VCU team that was one of the biggest outliers that we've ever seen go into the Final Four. Showtime, I did not do the bracket yet. No, I'm still going through the system. So 0-34 teams that began, and you can look it up, teams that began the season unranked and then were given a top 2 seed for the NCAA tournament. Last season, remember this one, very popular pick was Arizona They were unranked prior to last season, went in as the number 2 seed, and they did not make it. They really should have been knocked out in the second round by TCU, but there was horrible officiating in that game. So based on that, and I didn't like Purdue as it is. I don't like Matt Painter. There are certain coaches in the NCAA tournament that coach tight and lose games that they shouldn't. That's Matt Painter. That's Jamie Dixon. That's Matt Barnes. Holy crap. Rick Barnes. You never want to touch Rick Barnes' coach team in the NCAA tournament. I was out on Tennessee even before they lost their point guard. So I'm not going Purdue and I'm not going Marquette, but here's the thing. They're both in the same region in the East. So, then you got to start looking, and so is Tennessee. 3 of the coaches that struggle the most in the tournament in terms of big name programs, Shaka Smart and Rick Barnes and Matt Painter, are all in the same region. So that's the bracket in the East where I think you could get a little cute, maybe with a Duke, maybe with a Kansas State. I know Kansas State didn't grade out well with this. They only qualified in 6 out of the 14, but they come from the Big 12. They've won 7 games against quad 1 competition. Talk about Kansas State. Marcus Novell, their point guard, is fantastic. Keontae Ingram, they have some really good players on that Kansas State team. I'm really intrigued by them as a 3. And hell, listen, you have Kentucky at 6. You never know what Kentucky's going to do. They always have the blue blood players. Michigan State with Tom Izzo is in that bracket. Memphis, this is a really good Memphis team. They could go far too. That's the bracket you've got to get cute in, I think. But Houston, Marcus Sasser, I think, is going to be okay. They qualified in 13 of these 14 Final Four trends. That is a big number. You have to put Houston in the Final Four unless we get some information that that he is really hurting. I know Texas also qualifies in 13 of these. Texas has a bad history in the tournament. Rodney Terry, he's done a good job. I don't trust him in the tournament. I really don't. And Texas doesn't shoot the 3 very well. I know the scoring is balanced, but Texas makes me really, really nervous. They're like the chic pick right now, and I hate when that happens. I'm usually trying to fade that when the public jumps on a team as they are with Texas right now. I don't like Xavier because they're an extreme team. I already talked about that. So really almost by default, and it's not by default. Houston is the best team overall, in my opinion. They check all the boxes. I think you have to pick them coming out of the Midwest. And then the West, I'm fine with UCLA or Kansas. Listen, Jaime Jaquez, Tigger Campbell, they are tremendous players. As 2 of the best players in college basketball. I know they've been dealing with injuries. I get it. But either one of those teams are fine by me, and they both qualified. Kansas was 13 out of 14. UCLA was also 13 out of 14. I'm loving both of those teams. I'm really intrigued. I know the Pac-12 has some trouble in the tournament, but I am really, really intrigued by UCLA. Kansas back-to-back, I don't know, but they've won 17 quad 1 games, which is just stupid. That you could win that many quad 1 games. So this team is for real. I think, UCLA, again, the injuries are a problem. I mean, Jaden Clark was their best on-ball defender, but they're not going to be facing, looking at the bracket, they're not going to be facing teams with a lot of big-time wings. So I'm good with UCLA there. And then Alabama, listen, we all know Alabama is hard to root for with the situation there with Miller. But at the same time, he's as close to Kevin Durant as I have ever seen of a player coming out of college. Talking about Brandon Miller, shoots the 3 at over 40%. They do turn it over a little bit too much for my liking, Alabama. But I don't see, Virginia is a really weak 4. I don't see them maybe even going past the first round. Arizona, they qualified for 12 out of the 14 systems, which is good. But I'm not in love with Arizona. I'm not really big. They turned it over a lot, Arizona. I think Alabama's a better team. Baylor, we've already tossed Baylor. Baylor is a week 3. So it's either Arizona or Alabama. And, the numbers all scream out Alabama there for me. So, I'm thinking Alabama, Houston, Kansas, or UCLA. And then, again, whether it's Duke, whether it's Kansas State, I think you got to get cute, in the East region because, there's no There's no way that I'm picking Purdue. They burned many times during a tournament. You're not taking a Rick Barnes Tennessee team under any circumstances. Kansas State intrigues me. They turn the ball over a lot though. But Keontae Johnson, probably the most impactful transfer. So I'm really intrigued with them as well. All right. So, and I'm going to go through the bracket when we're done. So don't worry about that. I'm going to go through the bracket and give you some thoughts. How I'm going to play with my brackets, my multiple brackets. And I usually only have like 2 or 3. All right, so now as far as the finals are concerned, picking the winner. This is pretty straightforward to me. I know that it's wide open, this and that. There's only a very severe handful of teams that I think could win it all. For the sake of this exercise, I put down Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, the obvious ones. I included Purdue and Gonzaga initially before I did the Final Four thing and dove in on it. Texas, Arizona, UConn. For me, I'm not going to waste time with Purdue and Gonzaga. Gonzaga is an extreme team. They're not winning the NCAA tournament. If they do win it, God bless them. Then it beat the system. Okay, I'm fine with it. But you know what? Extreme teams do not win in the tournament. 4 out of 155 extreme teams have made the Final Four. So I'm tossing Gonzaga. I'm tossing Purdue. 34 teams began the season unranked, then got a top 2 seed in the tournament. They are 0-34, making the Final Four. So Purdue's not going to get to the final. And this is a team that has freshmen as guards. I know Edey is a fantastic player of the year, but they got to get him the ball. And Duke matches up extremely well. Kyle Filipowski is going to be able to defend him. Jeremy Roach, the senior. Duke's playing really well. I think they're going to beat Purdue. Hell, I even think Memphis can beat Purdue in the second round there. So I'm tossing Purdue. So for the sake of this, we're going to talk about Arizona, UConn. And UConn I have reservations about too, because Danny Hurley has lost in the first round the last 2 years. And he had Bouknight, an NBA player, 2 years ago. I don't trust him at all. And they get Iona. Rick Pitino's got 1 foot out the door, but is the best hands down college basketball coach in the nation. They could be upset in round 1 again. It's hard to feel any sort of confidence in UConn, even though their metrics are really good. But as far as UConn, the Final Four, their Final Four number, they qualified out of 10 out of 14. So, and I didn't go through them all. Let me just, before I get into the finals. So Houston qualified in 13 out of the 14. Alabama was 11 out of 14, but I still think they're a Final Four team. Kansas, 13 out of 14. UCLA, 13 out of 14. Purdue was 12 out of 14, but really, I'm going to take one away from them and make it 11 out of 14 because they're a team that began the season unranked and now we're a top 2 seed. None of them made the finals. Gonzaga, 11 out of 14. Texas, 13 out of 14. That's a strong number. Arizona, 12 out of 14. Duke, only 8 out of 14. That does make me nervous, but they're hot. UConn, 10 out of 14. Baylor, only 7 out of 14. We weren't playing them anyway in the Final Four. Kansas State, 6 out of 14. But I think playing in the rugged Big 12 hurts their numbers a little bit. Marquette, 13 out of 14. Intriguing, but they're another team that started unranked. I'm not going to play them in the Final Four. Creighton, 10 out of 14. I do think Creighton is a real dark horse. You got to watch out for Creighton. The 2 Ryans, Nembhard and Kalkbrenner, those are real tremendous players. Tennessee, we're not playing Tennessee in the Final Four. They were 8 out of 14. Xavier, 9 out of 14. We weren't playing them because they're an extreme team. And Kentucky, 6 out of 14. We weren't playing them. So for the finals, we're going to talk about Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, Arizona, and UConn. So the first category, and there's fewer categories for this one, but the first one is a big one. McDonald's All-American. Out of the last 44, this is a lot of teams. Out of the last 44 national champions in college basketball, 41 of those teams had a McDonald's All-American on them. All right, so that's a big one there. Now, teams out of those that I listed, and again, I've listed Houston, Alabama. If you want to write this down, Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, not Purdue, Texas, Arizona, and UConn. Teams that have a McDonald's All-American, 41 of the last 44 national champs had a McDonald's All-American on them. Houston has one. Alabama has one. Alabama has more than one. Kansas has more than one. UCLA has McDonald's All-American. Texas has multiple. I believe they have 3, actually. Arizona does not. UConn does not. So those are hits on Arizona and UConn. All right, next, 35% three-point shooting. Arizona and UConn are the only two that qualify for that. And that's, that's a fairly decent stat there. So now we're back to square one with all the teams here. 19 of the last 22 national champions shot 35% from three. And right now, that's only Arizona and UConn for the sake of this exercise. All right. One first conference tournament game. Every one of these teams won their first conference tournament game. Baylor, who's not included, they lost their first conference tournament game. We weren't going to use them at all to win it all. Next. Okay, so out of the last 20 national champions, all 20 of them had a coach that previously went to the Sweet 16. So 20 for 20. Doesn't get more cut and dry than that. So last 20 national champions had a coach that previously went to the Sweet 16. That gets you into the experience factor, knowing what to expect, being calm under pressure, all that stuff. The teams with coaches that previously went to the Sweet 16 are Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, and that's it. Texas, nope. Arizona, no. UConn, no. That's a big one. 20 out of 20. You can't argue with that one. All right. Conference or conference tournament champion. All right. So conference or conference tournament champion. Every single one of these teams qualified. So you can put a check mark next to all of those teams. Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, Arizona, and UConn. All of them were either conference regular season or conference tournament champions. All right. The next one, 70% free throw shooters. And as far as by the way, let me just reiterate the conference being the regular season conference champ or the conference tournament champ, 34 of the last 36 national champions hit that benchmark. All right, 70% free throw shooters. All of these teams qualify there. That's a big one too. 19 of the last 20 shot 70% from the free throw line. Top 20 overall ranking in Ken Pomeroy. 21 of the last 22 national champions hit the top 20 Ken Pom. All of these teams qualify again. Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, Arizona, UConn. They all finished in Ken Pomeroy's top 20 going into the tournament. All right. Turnovers per possession. All right. 19 of the last 20 national champions finished within the top 110 in the country in turnovers per possession. This has some differentiality here. Qualifying top 110 in turnovers per possession are Houston, UCLA, and Texas. That's it. Alabama does not qualify. Kansas does not qualify. Arizona does not qualify. UConn does not qualify. They did not finish in the top 110 in the country in turnovers per possession. All right, making just the finals of their conference tournament. All right, so making the finals of their conference tournament, that's a big one as well. They all qualified there, so you could put a check mark next to these teams as well. All made their finals of their conference tournament. All right, and Ken Pomeroy adjusted defense has to be within 40. All right, 19 of the last 20 champions had a pre-tournament adjusted defense of Ken Pomeroy at 40 or better. Arizona, the only one who does not qualify for that. Arizona is just outside of that number. So you got to dock Arizona for that one. And then finally, 27 wins. Now for the Final Four, we talked about 24 wins pre-tournament, not counting the tournament itself, including the conference tournaments. Having 27 wins is a big one as well. All but UConn reached that benchmark as far as having 27 wins. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 systems for the national champion. Let's go through who qualifies for the most. Right at the top with 10. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I had 11. So qualifying in 10 of the 11 systems to be the national champion, 3 teams: Houston, UCLA, just 2. Houston and UCLA. That's it. All right. So UCLA, again, they had the injuries, and people are going to be jumping off UCLA because of the media narrative. I know Adem Bona has an injured shoulder, but he looks like he's going to be okay. Clark, losing him is a big one, no doubt about it. But again, UCLA has two of the best players in the entire country, in Jaquez and Tigger Campbell there. So I think that they're going to be just fine. And the systems all are showing UCLA to be a really, really strong team. I just wanted something else I wanted to add about UCLA. They've been shooting it really well lately as well. So, I think UCLA looks really, really strong. Now, qualifying with 9 of 11. All right, 9 of the 11 national championship systems are Alabama, Kansas, and Texas. All right, so Alabama with 9, Kansas with 9, and Texas with 9. Okay. Next up with 7 out of the 11, which is not great, is Arizona. So Arizona only qualified 7 for the 11 national championship systems. And then last but not least, UConn, only 5 of 11 did they qualify. UConn is not winning the national championship. I mean, hell, they might even lose in the first round to Iona. That is as scary as a first round matchup as you could possibly get. So you toss Arizona, you toss UConn. I don't like Arizona's chances of winning it all. So I've tossed them as well. I gave you my reservations about Texas, and Houston is such a strong team. And if you get, good news about Sasser, you have to put Houston in there. So really, for me, I'm going to be playing Houston to win it all. I'm going to be playing Alabama to win it all. I'm going to be playing UCLA to win it all, and I'm going to be playing Kansas to win it all. So those 4 teams are going. One of those 4 is going to win the national championship. That's just how it's breaking down. Both the Final Four systems we discussed and the national championship. If I had to put a gun to my head and pick one, I'd hate to say it. I would have to say Alabama first, Houston second. I would go UCLA third and Kansas fourth. I really like this UCLA team. I really do. And I think that that's the best value. If you're in a really big pool, most people are going to take Houston. Most people are going to take Alabama, and then probably Kansas will be the third choice. I think you take UCLA. I've already done that in one of my pools. I picked UCLA to win it all. I think they have an excellent chance to do so for sure. Absolutely. All right. So wanted to go through the bracket now. All right, because I know you guys have been asking me my thoughts on the bracket. We'll start with the West. Let's do the West first. All right. We'll go through the West. Kansas is playing Howard. Bill Self is going to be okay. I know he had the stent put in. It's a routine procedure. He should be fine. I think he's going to be okay. Kansas, we talked about 17 quad 1 wins, which is just a silly number. This is a really, really, really good team. Jalen Wilson has led the team in scoring. They have Grady Dick, who is a phenomenal shooter. They have a guy that could really stretch the floor. I think this Kansas team is really strong. They're coming in good form. I like them to go a long way. And like I said, it's either Kansas or UCLA for me in the Final Four out of this bracket. Arkansas, Illinois, we talked about how I don't, the system that says don't take Arkansas to go past, to even make the Sweet 16. I still think it's a good team. I think they're going to beat Illinois. They're not going to get past Kansas. I don't like Illinois. I think Illinois is a little bit too streaky for me. Terrence Shannon is a good player for Illinois, but I just think that Arkansas had they've done some good things in a tournament before. They have experience. I think Arkansas is going to come out on top. St. Mary's and VCU. I like VCU. I gave you the stat. Teams that are from a non-major conference are 6 and 8 if they're a top 5 seed in the first round of the tournament. St. Mary's qualifies, so does San Diego State, in that very scary stat. I'm going to go with VCU. VCU ran roughshod in the A-10 tournament. This is a team that forces 16.9 turnovers a game. They've hit their stride at the right time. They've won 11 out of their last 12 games. This is a hot VCU team. And UConn, if they get past Iona, which is no given, they really got to be careful about VCU. There is just one big landmine for UConn, who I'm very leery of. Dan Hurley has burned me in the past. I'm not very confident. I know Adama Sanogo was good, but so was James Bouknight a couple of years ago, and they went out in the first round. Tristan Newton, they have good players on UConn. I think ultimately they will pull away late against Iona, but Iona, they've won 14 straight. They They have 3 different players, Iona, averaging 15 points or more in that streak. So this is a dangerous team, but I do think UConn's going to win. And I'm going to play VCU to beat UConn in some of my brackets. And I'm going to have UConn beat them in the other, and then Kansas eventually just knock off UConn there. TCU, they're going to beat the Arizona State Nevada winner there. TCU, Mike Miles is very good. They should have beaten Arizona. They got jobbed in the tournament last year. Jamie Dixon doesn't do so great in the tournament himself. And, Eddie Lampkin Jr. left the team because he accused Dixon of racism. That's a distraction, but I think they will get past Arizona State, who's strong defensively, and Nevada's been terrible lately. I'm not going with either one of those teams to beat TCU. Gonzaga is going to beat TCU in the next round. They'll go past Grand Canyon. Northwestern and Boise State. Northwestern second time in the tournament, but Boise State's picked up some really good wins. They beat San Diego State. Talking about Boise State, they split with Utah State, who's a really good team. So I like this Boise State team to pick up their first ever NCAA tournament win. UCLA will beat UNC Asheville, and then UCLA will beat Boise State. Now, Gonzaga, UCLA. I'm going to split the baby on this one in some of my brackets. I'm going to take Gonzaga to beat UCLA. In some of my brackets, I'm going to have UCLA beat Gonzaga in the other. If I had to make one choice, I would go UCLA over Gonzaga, but you got to vary it up a little bit if you have multiple brackets in a given pool. And then I have Kansas, UCLA, or Kansas, Nevada, Gonzaga playing each other in the regional finals, and then I have Kansas or UCLA making the Final Four. So that's how I have that looking over there. The Midwest. So I think the Midwest is a pretty good draw for Houston. Texas is really the only team. Texas A&M was severely understated at 7. They're a good team. Houston's going to roll over Northern Kentucky. I don't even think they need to play Sasser. Jamal Sheed has been fantastic. No issues if they don't have him for the first game there. Iowa against Auburn. Iowa got completely hosed having to play in Alabama. So, Auburn, Bruce Pearl does a good job in the tournament. Fran McCaffrey, who's just a jerk, has struggled in the tournament. I think Auburn's going to come away with the win, and then Houston will wind up beating Auburn. Miami against Drake. So Jim Larrañaga, this is a scary game. Drake is a really good team. They have Tucker DeVries, the son of the coach there, Darian DeVries, who's a good player, averages 19 points a game. They have, they shoot the three really well. Talking about Drake, 37.3%. That's a scary number. But Miami is a 3-guard lineup led by Isaiah Wong, and they have a coach in Jim Larrañaga who took George Mason to the Final Four. Larrañaga knows what he's doing. There's certain coaches I trust in the tournament. Larrañaga is one of them. So I'm going to go with Miami to win that game. Indiana, I love Indiana. I think Mike Woodson's a great coach. I know Kent State's getting a lot of attention, but Indiana should beat them. And I think Indiana will beat Miami as well. So if you want to put Drake over Miami, in some of your brackets, you can do that. I think Indiana will beat either one of those teams, so you can play around with that one if you want. Iowa State will beat Pittsburgh, who beat Mississippi State yesterday. Mississippi State shouldn't have even been in the tournament. Should have been Rutgers. But Iowa State, who does very good in the tournament, they did well last season. They have a coach who knows what he's doing in the tournament, TJ Otzelberger. They did get, Caleb Grill. They released him from the team, their third leading scorer. But this, they've been playing really well lately. Iowa State, I think they're going to win. Xavier should beat Kennesaw State. First-time teams that have a terrible record in the tournament, as Kennesaw State will soon find out. Texas A&M, Penn State. Texas A&M is a really good team. Now, Penn State's coming in hot. They could really shoot the lights out, but I'm going to go Texas A&M. Buzz Williams, I really like Buzz Williams. He's another coach that I trust. Wade Taylor has been one of the best offensive rebounders in college football. I know Jalen Pickett is very good for Penn State. Free-flowing offense, they can shoot the three well, but if they're off, I think Texas A&M is a very good team, and Texas A&M is going to be a threat to Texas in the next round. Like I said, Texas doesn't overly shoot the ball well, but Marcus Carr, so Jabari Rice, Timmy Allen, they have players, good athletes, but Rodney Terry, he's done a good job filling in for Chris Beard, but Rodney Terry, I'm not sure about him going far in the tournament. Inexperience could hurt him. And I have that same reservation about John Shire at Duke, even though Duke is hot. So I'm going to pick Texas to beat Colgate, even though Colgate can shoot the three better than almost any team in the country. Texas A&M could beat Texas in the next round. I'm going to still pick Texas, but I will pick Iowa State to beat Xavier. I don't like Xavier. I don't believe in Xavier. I'm not a fan of them. I'm not a Sean Miller guy. I know Sully Brown is really good, but they've lost Zach Freemantle to foot surgery. That's a big loss for Xavier, who does not defend well at all. They're going to be involved in a real slugfest with Iowa State, and that's a game Iowa State is capable of winning. And then I have Texas beating Iowa State, and then Houston knocking off Texas. All right. So, mostly chalk. But again, here's the thing too. You don't want to go crazy picking upsets because you're going to cost yourself precious points that you don't need to. You don't want to be the wise guy that puts, Chattanooga into or Furman or Charleston into this Elite Eight. That's stupid, And even if you get the winner correct, you might lose by a point or two because you were reckless earlier on in the tournament. So you want to be as conservative as you possibly can. For the South, Alabama, they're going to obviously win their first round matchup. I like West Virginia over Maryland. This West Virginia team is battle tested. They have a Hall of Fame coach in Bob Huggins. I think West Virginia is scary. They can shoot the ball really well. I think this is a very, very challenging matchup for Maryland. Jameer Young's played well for Maryland, no doubt about it. But Eric Stevenson, Mountaineers average 76.3 a game. This is going to be a tough matchup. I like West Virginia, and then Alabama will knock off West Virginia. This is the scary part of the entire bracket for me. San Diego State, the Mountain West has been horrific in the tournament, taking on a good Charleston team. 31 victories. That's a lot of wins for this Charleston team. Second time in a tournament since 1999. 6 players average between 9 and 12.3 points for Charleston. I'm going to pick Charleston to knock off San Diego State. I really feel that Charleston's going to win that game. Virginia against Furman. I know Furman is becoming a popular pick as well. Mike Bothwell and Jalen Slauson are good players. But Kiki Clark is still there for Virginia. I know they don't shoot their free throws very well, Virginia, but they're going to have a very, very tough defensive team. I think they're going to pull it out. I wouldn't be surprised if Charleston makes the Sweet 16 and knocks off Virginia in the next round. I'm fine with anybody picking Charleston going to the Sweet 16. I really do think this Charleston team is good, and their advanced metrics say the same thing. Mountain West has done horrible in this tournament. I don't trust San Diego State at all. I just don't. All right, Creighton and NC State. So Creighton is a really good team. Ryan Nembhard, Ryan Kalkbrenner. This is a very dangerous team that I think can go far. I'm telling you right now, I'm picking Creighton to not only knock off NC State, but to knock off Baylor. I don't believe in Baylor at all. Their defense is horrible. I know they got the 3 guards that, Keontae George, LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, but they played no defense. They finished the season terribly. They were knocked out. They lost their first game in the conference tournament. Creighton is a really good team. Now, Creighton, they have a very strong, one of the strongest starting 5 in college basketball, but they don't go deep. Talking about Creighton, if they run into some injuries or some foul problems, that could spell doom for Creighton, but I have them beating Baylor in the next round. Missouri, it's a joke that Missouri is a 7th ranked team. Utah State is going to beat Missouri. I think Utah State is a very, very good team. And here's the thing. Ryan Odom is the coach of Utah State. Remember Ryan Odom, UMBC, upset Virginia. This guy is a great coach. Stephen Ashworth really filling it up. They shoot the lights out, Utah State. All of these guys in the Utah State starting lineup can shoot the 3. I really feel good about them beating Missouri. I think Missouri is way overseeded. And they are an extreme team. And we already know my reservations about those teams. Arizona will beat Princeton, and then Arizona will probably beat Utah State, but I think Utah State can hang with them. And then I do have Arizona beating Creighton, but it wouldn't surprise me if Creighton makes the Elite 8. Alabama's coming out of that bracket. I have Alabama in the Final 4. I'm willing to put Alabama against Creighton in the Elite 8 in some of my brackets. All right, Purdue will be Texas Southern FDU winner. Memphis, Florida Atlantic is a fascinating matchup for me. I really think that this is Kendrick Davis is the best player on the floor in this matchup for Memphis. Memphis is scary if you're Purdue. If Memphis gets through and plays Purdue, I can see Memphis knocking off Purdue. They're very athletic. Talking about Memphis, they've been hot. But Florida Atlantic is top 40, both in offensive and defensive efficiency. This is a good team. I think either one of these teams could knock off Purdue in the next round. I'm going to go Memphis here. And in some of my brackets, I'm going to pick Memphis to beat Purdue in the next round. Some of them I will have Purdue winning. Duke, Oral Roberts. I really like the way Duke is playing. A couple of things scare me about Duke. John Shire, first-year coach. Not sure how he's going to react to the tournament. And Oral Roberts, Max Asmus, the guy that we fell in love with a couple of years ago when as a 15 seed, Oral Roberts won a couple of games. This is a scary matchup for them. Now, that being said, Duke is very long. They're playing great. Kyle Filipkowski's playing great. Jeremy Roach, senior leader. I think that they're going to be able to handle Oral Roberts, but this is going to be a game with 10 minutes to go. I think it's going to be less than a 5-point game, 5 minutes to go. Scary for Duke, but I think they're going to pull it out. Tennessee, Louisiana. Listen, I hate Rick Barnes coach teams. They always do terrible in the tournament going back to his time at Texas. I have no faith in him. They lost to Kai Ziegler, their point guard, which is death for a team going into the tournament. They don't score. They play good defense, but Louisiana is scary. Jordan Brown from Nevada. Greg Williams Jr. came over from St. John's. Terrence Lewis from North Texas. They got really good play from all three of those guys. I might pick Louisiana in some of my brackets. If I do pick Tennessee, Duke's going to knock them off in the next round. So I don't have Tennessee going anywhere. Kentucky Providence is probably the best first round match there is. John Calipari has a lot of pressure on him. He has to win this game. Ed Cooley, however, is a terrific coach. And the big story here is he's got Bryce Hopkins, the Kentucky transfer, who's going to be looking for revenge. This one could go either way. I think Kentucky's just going to pull it out, though. They're much more athletic. Providence has lost 4 of 5 coming in. Providence doesn't defend a lick. I think that's bad against a Kentucky team who's very athletic. And this is one of the best shooting Kentucky teams we've seen in a long time. So I think Kentucky shooting the 3 much better than we're used to seeing out of them, which usually Kentucky's just full of athletes, and that leaves them susceptible to get upset, i.e. last season. They got shooters this year. I think Kentucky's going to pull it out. Kansas State will beat Montana State. I'm very, very keen on Kansas State. 7 quad 1 wins. That's a lot. They come from the Big 12 with very, very good school, very good conference. Keontae Johnson from Florida, the guy who collapsed on the court. That very scary incident was not cleared by Florida. He transferred to Kansas State where he's been great. Marcus Noel, the diminutive point guard, classic point guard, sets up the offense perfectly. But Kansas State turns it over a lot, and they have not played well offensively of late. So I'm a little concerned about Kansas State. I think they'll beat Montana State. But in that next round against Kentucky, that one could go either way. I still think Kansas State would wind up beating Kentucky. Michigan State, USC, absolute coin flip. Michigan State shoots the 3 as good as any team in the country. Andy Enfield is a tremendous coach from USC. I'll probably pick both of these teams on my various brackets. I don't have them going, either one of them going more than one round. Marquette will beat Vermont. And then I think Marquette, who's hot, will wind up beating the Michigan State USC winner. Kansas State against Marquette. I think I'm going to go Kansas State here. I just don't like this Marquette team. They are an extreme. They are that one team. Teams are 0-34 beginning the season unranked, and as far as getting to the Final Four, so I don't trust Marquette long term in this tournament. I think Duke is going to the regional finals where they're going to play Kansas State, and then I'm going to take Duke to go to the Final Four in some of my brackets. I'm going to take Kansas State to go to the Final Four in some of my other brackets. I want no part of Purdue. I want no part of Marquette. If they beat me and they make the Final Four, God bless. So be it. I'm fine. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So I'm going to have Alabama in the Final Four against Duke, Houston, and Kansas. In one of my brackets, I'm going to have Alabama in the Final Four with Kansas State, Houston, and UCLA. In another bracket, I'm going to have UCLA winning it against Alabama. I'm going to have Houston winning it against Alabama, and I'm going to have Alabama winning it against Houston. Okay, and then I'm also probably going to have a bracket where I'm going to have Kansas beating, maybe Arizona. I mean, I don't see. I think I can't find anybody else that's going to make it. I really think Alabama's the best bet. Arizona could get there. Baylor's not going to the finals. No way in hell. Virginia, absolutely. They may not even get out of the first round. They're not going to the finals. Purdue, not trusting them. Marquette, not trusting them. I'm down to Duke and Kansas State coming out of that bracket. I can't see either one getting to the finals. I'm just going to have to ride and die with Alabama, and that's pretty much it. So there you have it, guys. A lot of information I threw at you. I hope this was helpful. Like I said, go back, write it all down. I wish you nothing but the best of luck when the tournament kicks off tomorrow. I feel good about these these numbers and these systems. So we'll see what happens. Drop me your comments, your questions as the tournament goes along, and we'll go from there. So I hope you enjoy. Have a great night, everybody. We will talk soon.